one of the things that I like to do is really get my multi-track organized. That's sort of the first thing for me, so that I can find my way around quickly and easily. I know what's there. It also gives me a good chance to listen through to the whole recording and all of the individual tracks and work out a plot for what's going on. So what I've got here on the screen is a multi-track that I've been sent. The audio has been generated out of Logic. So the producers sent me basically a stereo file for every sound, for every track. Some of it's a little bit pre-mixed here, but there's quite a lot of stuff like the vocal here, which is just a dry vocal. But obviously, some of these things aren't going to be necessarily stereo files. They're stereo files, but they might not be stereo sounds. So one of the first thing I'll go through is going through and checking if they are stereo files or not. And to do that, I'll use an analyzer. The one I prefer is the Waves one here, the PAS analyzer. I solo a track. That's a kick drum. I'll just turn it up a bit so you can... And as you can see from this phase meter, it's a mono sound, i.e. the line is straight up the middle. If it was a straight line, even if it was panned, it would still be a straight line. If it's a stereo sound, I'll find a track that's stereo so you can see the difference. I'm sure some of you will have used things like this already, but okay, here's some. That's definitely stereo. It's a pair of acoustics, I think. So when I play this one, you can see that you're getting a kind of spread of sound across the stereo. You've even got some things that are a little bit out of phase, some elements there. It also gives you a nice little EQ analysis as well, which is quite handy. So I'll do that with all of the tracks. I'll go through, I'll check which ones are mono, which ones are stereo. The ones that are mono, I'll probably bounce them down to a mono track, just to save on voices and processing, and just to make life easier as well. It's a lot easier if you've got one waveform rather than two for a mono sound. And you'll probably notice another thing that I've done here is that I've coloured the tracks and I put them into what I see as a sensible order. This way of laying things out is based very much on how I would have laid things out on a piece of tape originally. So that's another thing I've inherited from my studio background, is I start off with the drums on one side and I gradually go through the instruments, drums, percussion, bass, and I have particular colours that I like to use for types of instruments. And that way I don't have to constantly read what's on the file or what's on the track name in order to see what's going on. I can, if I want to find the guitars, I just hop to the bit which is green. That's my preference for guitars. Obviously, you're welcome to use your own colour system, but this just happens to be the one I like. I use light blue for drums, dark blue for bass, green for guitars, sort of oranges and browns and things for keyboards. Strings are purple, and then I hadn't quite got all the way through here, but my lead vocal I tend to do red. That's the only thing I do red, because that's, you know, you probably spend more time working on the lead vocal than almost anything else in a mix. And then I would have coloured my backing vocals pink here. And then I'll have a stereo track at the bottom of the session, which has got this has got a guide mix on it at the moment. And that's the track that I'll end up recording my mix onto. And I'll have that set up right from the beginning so that I can monitor my levels and kind of keep an eye on things, and I'll actually listen to the mix going through that stereo channel so that I know that what I'm hearing is what's going to get recorded. It's just, again, that's a sort of something I've inherited from the studio, of monitoring the mixes as you're putting them down. And it's a useful technique. The way you do that is you have a stereo track and you select the input on it to be your input from the desk, whatever that might be. In this case it's that and the output to be the right output. And I select that track to input. Now when I play, the sound of the mix is coming out through the desk, through that track, and back into the external input on the desk. Obviously, if you're doing this if you're mixing within the box, you'd probably have something like this set up anyway. It's quite a good idea to be able to hear where you're actually routing rather than having to change that near the end of a mix. So that's how I get started, really. Get organised, colour, put the tracks in order. Drums, bass, instruments, vocals. Give them all colours. Sort out what's mono and what's stereo. And another thing I'll do as well, sometimes I'll get files that are very quiet, like this one here, for example. They've been recorded quiet for some reason. In Pro Tools you can expand the waveform so that you can see them, but rather than having to do that a lot, I'll sometimes gain up the audio files and then just turn them down by the appropriate amount on their volume faders. And once I've done all of that, I'm kind of ready to start looking at the sounds.